Welcome, everybody, to episode 54 of the Pseudo Nerd Podcast for February 24th, 2017. I'm your podcast host, Josh Kaiser, and joining me today, Mr. Josh Addix.
How's everybody doing in the... Oh, man, I was going to say MCU, but that's not... We're not doing MCU today.
No.
So, hey, how's everybody doing?
And Kyle Hoagland.
Good old crash and burn from good old Josh Haddix. What's going on, everybody? Good thinking, by the way, Haddix. I'm glad you were thinking on your feet to screw up.
I always think on my feet. All right.
Well, for what it's worth, coming up in today's podcast, we will be in the Marvel comic universe, as we were going to be reviewing and breaking down Civil War II, which just wrapped up its little series here not too long ago. But in the meantime, how you guys been?
Not bad. Got killed didn't escape an escape room this past weekend. So we died.
That's true.
Died to a mad scientist.
What the hell? All right, so I saw this on Facebook. I need someone to explain this to me because none of it made sense when someone was trying to explain it to me.
You don't know what an escape room is?
No.
So basically, they lock you in a room and you have 60 minutes to get out, and you get out by undoing locks, which you follow clues to undo locks, to undo other locks, to get keys, to undo other locks, to eventually get out. It's like many puzzles and stuff to try to solve and get your way out. And I felt like we kind of floundered the first 20 minutes or so, and I felt that was partly on them for really doing a bad job of trying to get you started in there. I don't know how you feel about that, Haddix, but that was kind of my feeling on it.
Well, Kaiser, I don't want to throw you under the bus here, okay? But we tried to unlock the first lock to no avail. And so they came in, they give you 5 hints while you're in there. And our first hint was the lady came in and told us to use the numbers that we found to unlock this lock. And we said, oh, we tried. And Kaiser just didn't unlock the lock correctly. So we did not get into that. So
I mean, I'm sorry a padlock had to be squeezed and pulled down instead of just pulled down.
I all joking aside, though, I do agree with you a little bit. I think it was twofold. One, yeah, it was definitely odd to get started, because once we got started, I feel like we got in a lot better of a groove. But I also think that was because if you look back at that, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And I think in the beginning, we all were looking into it way more than we needed to.
That could be too.
So my understanding is nobody actually got out of that room alive. There was like a dozen of you.
Well, we're all together.
It's a group thing.
So, it's one big group effort.
You're all working together to try to do it. And I honest to God think that it was, when we first started, we're like trying. Excuse me, I had to sneeze real quick.
How that we lost you?
I did too.
I think we were all trying to look too much into things. I mean, we were like analyzing every picture, every like drawing, everything like that. And I think if we went back to a different room, but it was the same difficulty, I think we'd be fine, because we'd be like, all right, let's just find the clues. And those clues are very simple and distinct, and it unlocks one lock, and then we'll get a clue, and that unlocks another lock. Like, that's it. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think you and I, Haddix, spent 15 minutes trying to solve a math problem at the beginning of the game that was actually unsolvable at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't that we weren't solving it. It was that there was no way to solve it because it wasn't used till later.
Right.
This is why you need the world's greatest detective, me, to be there, take care of business. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there to save you guys' lives.
There was no Big Bufords in there, so.
Well, now that I know, now I've had the taste of Big Buford. Now that I would actually be enticing at this point. Haddix, or not Haddix. Oh, go ahead, Haddix.
I was just saying it was fun though, and I would definitely do it again. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely.
Kaiser, real quick though, how was your weekend? Obviously, yours was very, very eventful.
Yeah, I mean, it was my birthday, so spent Friday with my family and the ladies' family. Had dinner and hung out with them. and then cleaned the house all day Saturday before the escape room and friends came over. And then Sunday went over to Grandma's and had dinner and celebrated, the birthday there. So it was a birthday bash weekend, to say the least.
I wouldn't call us friends. Acquaintances came over,
Fair enough. Some people
with mutual interests and of similar heights and ages.
Yes.
Did you happen to get a letter not from me, but you have something coming soon from me if you didn't get already?
I don't believe I got a letter from you at this point, but
it might not say it was from me though. You'll get something, and you'll probably figure it was from me.
Okay.
So you have that looking forward to.
Kaiser, you might also get
tease.
something. You might also get something from me, but it's not got my name on it, so it's not. It's not Hoagie's. It's mine.
All right, good to know.
I see what you're doing.
Fair enough. There's not a good segue from that point right there into a civil war. Or yes, there is. It is. Hey, if Haddix takes credit for whatever Hoagie sent, it could cause a civil war between friends.
I feel like if you have to say that out loud that you couldn't find one, then I feel like that loses a little bit of its luster.
Yeah. Don't worry, you just edit that part out, and the PMPers won't know any different. They'll just think that was a real smooth transition.
And then also edit this part as well, correct?
Right, that part where I'm telling you to edit it out, that would be ideal.
And then this part too, where we're reminding each other. Okay,
exactly. That'd be smooth.
So before we get started on the actual Civil War discussion, one thing that I noticed as I was reading through the comic is there are a lot of factions. Like a ton of I thought this was going to be like an Avengers versus another part of the Avengers, kind of like the movie, where it was almost like the Avengers kind of took a little bit of a split, and then they recruited a couple of other people like Ant-Man and guys like that. There was a lot of people in this comic, many of which I've either never heard of or ones I just didn't think would be included. I think I saw Deadpool randomly in one of the shots, which I thought was kind of interesting. So with that said, I did a little bit of research and realized one particular group, the Avengers, there have been a lot of members in the Avengers in one way, shape, or form. So what we're going to do tonight is we are going to go ahead and I have a list of 20 heroes or 20 Marvel characters. And what these two guys are going to do is tell me whether or not this person was ever a member of the Avengers.
Are we
ready?
How's this going? Score? Are we talking out loud, or are we?
Oh no! I was getting to that. I'm trying to get you guys pumped. I'm asking you, are you guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Let's get ready to rumble.
So I think the score overall is what, 1-1, 2-1. I think Kaiser's up 2-1.
I think it's 2-1 Kaiser.
I believe
2-1
it's 2-1
Kaiser.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm relying on you, Haddix. You being you're the comic book nerd in our group, that you should be able to come out with a win here. But we'll see how it goes. Kaiser, since you won the last one, I'll let you have the honors of whether or not you want to go first or second.
I'll go second.
You'll go second. Okay. Go ahead and take off your headset. I'll send you a message when you come back in.
Okay.
Go in your soundproof chamber.
I will do that.
So how many did you say there were, Hoagie?
There are 20. 20. Okay. So basically, I'm going to name a hero or a character in general, and you're just going to tell me if they are an Avenger,
in the Avengers or not,
or not.
Yep. Okay. Not are they a current Avenger? Or were they ever in the Avengers?
Yeah. If they've ever been a member of the Avengers.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Or part of the Avenger Initiative, or however they actually describe being a member of the Avengers.
I got you.
Okay. So here we go. Just so you know, there's 20. I believe it's split right down the middle of 10 characters that have been or are, and 10 who have never.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Okay. Yep.
All right. And here we go. Star-Lord.
No.
Human Torch.
No.
Wasp.
Yes.
Hercules.
No.
Ghost Rider.
No.
Silver Surfer.
No.
Gambit.
God, I want to say no, so I'm gonna say no.
Mantis.
Yes, I don't know who that is. So
Tigra.
yes,
Adam Warlock.
yes,
Maria Hill.
yes,
Elektra.
no,
Jean Grey.
no,
Sandman.
yes.
Wolverine.
I gotta say no. There. Yes, I'm gonna say yes on Wolverine.
Cyclops.
No.
Deadpool.
Oh God, see, I don't know if, for the sake of this, yes.
Doctor Doom.
No.
Iron Fist.
Yes.
And finally, Howard the Duck.
Yes.
Just remind me again, what'd you say for Adam Warlock?
Yes.
Okay. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You got 11 out of 10.
So 11 correct answers out of 20. Right?
Out of 20, you got 11.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
All right, I'm getting Kaiser back in. At some
All
point.
right, I'm back.
Okay, here we go. The number to beat is 11. He got 11 out of 20,
That's
which is a failing grade in most schools.
Right.
It's. I'll say something about it after. I don't want to coax Kaiser into anything. So I'll wait.
Okay, so Kaiser, I think we already explained what the rules are here, but you got 20 characters. I split them right down the middle. There are 10 that have been Avengers or are currently, and there are 10 that have never been an Avenger. Okay? So you're going to tell me.
It's a shame Haddock's got 11, because if he only got 10, I could literally say Avenger for all 20 of them, and I would tie
true,
him.
You could.
You know?
That's true.
Oh, yeah, that
would be
true.
hilarious.
No, and once again, sort of a dick move, but I like your strategy.
Yeah, you know.
But for the sake of fair play and you know the love of the game, let's make this honest.
No, yeah.
All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Star-Lord.
No.
Human Torch.
Yes.
Wasp.
Yes.
Hercules.
No.
Ghost Rider.
No.
Silver Surfer.
Yes.
Gambit.
No.
Mantis.
Yes.
Tigra.
Yes.
Adam Warlock.
Yes.
Maria Hill.
No.
Elektra.
No.
Jean Grey.
Yes.
Sandman.
No.
Wolverine.
Yes.
Cyclops.
No.
Deadpool.
No.
Doctor Doom.
Yes.
Iron Fist.
Well, he's a defender, but I'll say no.
And Howard the Duck.
Shit, yeah, why not?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Boom.
So let's go over them real quick. Star-Lord, you both got right. Never was an Avenger. Human Torch, Kaiser, you got it right by saying he was once an Avenger. He is actually currently in the 2015 Avengers Unite
See, that's
group.
the weird part. That's the weird part about this one is There's been so many
there are a lot of
versions
Avengers
that,
yeah, absolutely, sure.
I knew who half these characters were, but
Avengers
I don't
Unity
know.
is what the group he's in.
Yeah, see, exactly. It's like weird.
Actually, every member of the Fantastic Four was once in Avengers, by the way. Wasp, you both said yes, that's right. Hercules, you both said yes, that's right. Ghost Rider is a no. Haddix, you got that right. Kaiser, you got that wrong. No, I'm sorry. Haddix, you said Ghost Rider was in the Avengers.
I thought I said no.
You said no, sorry. So it's 13 to 12. Sorry, I both gave you guys credit for that one. Silver Surfer, you both said yes. Gambit Silver Surfer was never in the Avengers. Gambit was never in the Avengers. Mantis and Tigra, yes, were in the Avengers. Adam Warlock was not. Maria Hill is in the Avengers. Elektra was never in the Avengers. You both got that right. Jean Grey was never in the Avengers. Kaiser, you said yes. Haddix, you said no. Sandman was not an Avenger. Wolverine was. Cyclops was not. Deadpool was. Doctor Doom was.
I knew that one, actually.
Iron Fist was. And Howard the Duck never was.
Okay.
So the only one I missed there was that Haddix, both you and Kaiser both said Ghost Rider no. I did not mark that before. So final score was 13 to 12 in favor of Kaiser. So Kaiser scores 4 to 2. Any questions on any of these? Any of these you thought were?
No, like I said, mine was more of, there's so many versions of the Avengers that it was tough to, figure out if they had or not.
Oh, sure.
What made you hold back on? I think it was Wolverine that you said I almost put you down for a no, and you just said like last minute you said yes.
Well, because then I thought in my head, oh God, I think I remember seeing some version of Avengers that he was in, so that's why I was like, oh yeah. So it's like that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like weird when you try to nitpick the different versions of the Avengers because there's so many.
Right.
But really, I didn't know half of them. I was guessing. So
yeah, it was a guessing game for sure.
Hey, it's why I call the pseudo nerd and not the full blown nerd. Correct.
Exactly. Yep.
That's right.
Well, once again, congratulations to Kaiser for taking the win. He's got a 4-2 lead. This is starting to sound a little bit like 2016.
I think
right?
I think 3-1, 3-1 lead.
Yeah.
And you know what happens when people have 3-1 leads?
Watch out.
Oh damn!
Well, according to Hoagie, you're going to win. So, right?
I did say
true.
That. I did say
that is true.
So,
In 5, I'll win in 5. So we'll see. So now let's just get into the Civil War comic that we're reviewing today. But before we do that, this is Civil War 2. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with the comics themselves, Civil War, of course, was a big motion picture movie that had come out. It was loosely based off the comic Civil War, which was released a few years ago. Actually, I think it was a little more than a few years ago. But did you guys... How familiar are you guys with the Civil War story? I guess the original one before we get into the second.
When it came out, I think it was before I've never been a huge Marvel guy, so it was kind of before I got into any Marvel comics. But when the movie was coming out, I read up on it. I didn't read the actual comics, from front to back, but I read up on the whole storyline and what was involved, just so that when I went into the movie, I could kind of draw parallels to it.
I said I never got a chance to really go back and look at Civil War. That was a comic back in 2006, I think 2007. So I mean that was long before any real interest I had with comics as an adult. I was into comics. I was into Marvel really bad when I was a kid, when I was an adolescent. But as far as anything in my adulthood, I really didn't get too much into Marvel again until I think the movie universe started cranking up again. So I really don't know too much at all about the first Civil War storyline.
Okay, so I read it. It ultimately the movie had the rough basis down. Captain America and Tony Stark kind of did not see eye to eye on the whole registering as superheroes. So the concept kind of comes into play in a way in this one, in the sequel, in that there's a morality issue that takes place, which we can kind of get into more here in a minute. That said, what did you guys, you did read Civil War II, so what were your thoughts on the comic story overall?
I actually really enjoyed it. I think there was a lot going on, and again, I'm not well versed in Marvel, so I haven't read a lot after this, and I know there's a lot going on after this, and a little bit of what led into it. Well, I thought it was actually pretty good. I thought they did a good job at kind of having both sides and both being strong-willed, and I thought it actually ended up being a very good read.
It was when I first started going through it, I actually was not aware that this was an 8-parter. Like, it was an 8-part comic set that we got that we were actually going through. So at first, when I was first reading into this whole thing, first I was like, okay, this is kind of long, and I'm not much of a reader, so it was actually a little bit rough for me. I think it kind of picked up a bit more. I think after probably the third issue was when I think I got a little bit more into it. Don't want to talk about anything about it just yet. We'll give the spoiler warnings later. I think the only problem I had with it was at the very beginning. I didn't get the shifting of, like, when something was happening. Because obviously it was not in chronological order, the issues.
Well, the first two weren't.
Yeah, so I got kind of confused for a moment. It did explain it later. That's fine, but I wish that was maybe a little bit clearer. I also just felt like from the guy that's more invested into the movies and the coming of Thanos, and I understand that Thanos was supposed to be like the big guy to focus on in Civil War II, but I was very, very, I guess, a little underwhelmed with how they used Thanos in the comic itself. It just felt like he was very much a side person.
The Thanos was really, that's all he was just in some ways I think they just used the Thanos name more than anything else because they wanted somebody who was well known and there was a reason why they sent, so many superheroes out to stop him. Otherwise, obviously Civil War in the title, it's not meant to be the battle against Thanos.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just, once again, from the person who's been on more on the movie kick and has been waiting for this all-encompassing being to come in and invade, and then all of a sudden it was just like, oh, we figured it out and we beat him up, in issue, like, was it issue 1 or issue 2 or whatever it was, but
right.
It was just like, once again, it was one of those things where I understand that it's not the focus, but I think it was literally 2 pages.
Yeah, also it was very minimal. For me, I would have to say, comparing the two, Civil War II was easily much better than Civil War I. Also, Civil War I wasn't very good, to be honest. So, that's not saying a whole lot. I was really, really getting into it, and I thought the ending of Civil War II was terrible. We can get into further as we get deeper into this podcast, but I was really enjoying it. The thing that stands out, I think, most for me was the artwork was phenomenal in this. I think it was some of the best I've seen Marvel drawn in a comic book.
Yeah, it definitely was cool to look at. A lot of cool, and the big battle scenes where there's multiple superheroes.
a
lot of great visuals.
Yeah.
That's
from comparing it to DC to Marvel, Haddix. Like, is there do they use different kinds of methods for
different artists will do different artists will do different story arcs, or if they're in for the long haul, I guess a whole version of a comic, or the whole Batman series of a comic or something like that. So you get very drastic differences. But that same person draws the same. So they might draw a story arc for Superman and then go draw a story arc for Batman. So, I guess in a sense you would follow or a certain artist around if you liked his artwork. But like I have the whole series of Batman, and if you read it from front to back, the artwork changes like every 3 to 4 issues because a new artist comes in and does it. But obviously the same guy did this whole thing because it's the whole story.
So that's actually a point I was just going to make.
Is it different?
No, David Marquez draws the entire series, which is actually, to your point, not something that happens all the time with these longer, mini series where they're, it spanned 8 issues, but a lot of times they'll flip artists 2, 3, 4 times during that, so you get a lot of different artwork. Here you had the same guy draw the whole series, which really makes a difference. And I think he did an incredible job with the artwork in it. That was easily my favorite thing about this. That said, we can kind of get into the story now a bit, and we'll start just with the early part of it, sort of where they're laying the ground, the foundation of what is causing the turmoil between the superheroes. And ultimately what happens is there's an Inhuman who, for those of you who have not read anything about Inhumans or followed the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show with the Inhumans, there will be an Inhuman show in the Marvel Universe this fall. If you go back and watch our TV episode, we do mention it briefly. They have alien blood in them, basically, which causes them to get superpowers of their own. They're sort of mutant-esque in ways, and a new Inhuman develops these powers to basically get these visions where he sees the future. And in one of these futures, he sees Thanos coming, which is what, Kyle, you were kind of alluding to just briefly. And so Captain Marvel gets a bunch of superheroes to show up where Thanos is supposed to be, and lo and behold, Thanos shows up, and because they had this warning, they're able to stop him from, taking over, getting that cube.
Yeah, whatever that cube was,
Whatever that cube was, which must have been, they didn't really discuss what the cube was in this, so I'm guessing that's something that was found in another issue or another series or something like that.
I thought they were talking, first of all, I thought they already mentioned that the cube wasn't even on Earth anymore, and it made me think that they moved it, and that made me think that they're talking about the Tesseract.
They could have been, but I think they meant more in that sense that they moved it because they knew he was coming. So they moved it so he wouldn't be able to get it.
Right.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I get you.
So that said, there's a battle. They stop Thanos. Everything is great until you realize that Tony Stark kind of comes along and says, "Hey, how did you know this was happening?" They said, "Oh, we got this Inhuman who can find these visions of the future."
By the way, I think you went to the first fight was actually against the Celestials. The Celestial invasion was the one that they used. The Thanos was the second fight.
You guys are jumping to issue 1. So Thanos was Thanos was in the prequel, and there's some casualties of that battle.
There is a casualty I was going to get to, but if you want to bring that up now, we can. That's fine.
I just
want to say, because I think when you were talking about the celebration and Tony Stark finding out how they found out,
that's issue 1. That's issue 1. Yeah, so there's the battle with Thanos, and there's some. So it's kind of like Hoagie said. I believe that there's an issue 0, and then there's and it's called issue something number 1. And I think that was Free Comic Book Day. And they released this issue, and it's the big fight with Thanos. I think it was supposed to attract a lot of attention. And at the end of it were the casualties. And that kind of left you lingering for when Civil War comes out. Like, oh, holy crap, what happens? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then it goes into kind of the backstory on the Inhumans, and then into that fight you were talking about.
Okay, so I mean that's I guess that that makes sense that they would that was sort of the tease, I guess, to get them into it. So the big casualty as you're talking about is War Machine, who you all know is Tony Stark's good buddy. He does die in it. Is it well known? I didn't know this, but they kind of developed it that Captain Marvel and Rhodey had they were like lovers. Yeah, is that something they just did for this story, or is that sort of a well-known relationship?
I'm not sure in like the current comics because I don't really keep up with Marvel, but I'm interested to see if they build that into the MCU because Captain Marvel is coming to the MCU.
Right.
This is the first I've ever seen it, but that doesn't mean much because I don't read a bunch of Marvel comics. So,
right, it's not as established as like Superman and Wonder Woman, like their treasured relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That one's a legit one,
Right. So ultimately, Tony Stark, obviously his best friend, longtime, partner in crime, if you will, is killed. He's very angry. He, finds out that Captain Marvel followed this lead from a vision, and he starts to see that she wants to use these visions as a way to arrest and or stop and or prevent, sort of like a Minority Report kind of
I was going to say the same thing. She's about Minority Reporting everybody.
Yeah, where she's just going after that, and he says, that's not right. And that is sort of the moral issue that, begins to cause the rift between superheroes in this book, much like how in the previous Civil War it was the, are you going to register as a superhero or not ordeal? Here's the moral thing where there's some gray area. And I will say one thing that I thought was really well done in this whole comic book, the way it was written is and maybe to me now that I've, seen a lot, I don't know about you guys, when I was reading this, I really, like, when it was Tony Stark was up there, I pictured Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. I pictured a lot of these characters, everyone talking, and how they were interacting, like, I pictured the movie version of themselves, like, saying those lines. So, like, when him and, Steve Rogers were talking, and he's like, hey, I'm not gonna, I'm not getting into a moral, argument with you, like, we're on the same side this time, like basically saying like him and Captain America aren't going to fight, and just a lot of their banter back and forth throughout it. I thought it was well written there, the way they kind of handled some of the characters and some of the, I caught myself laughing a few times throughout the whole series. But they really, that's sort of the build is basically Captain Marvel says she's going to keep doing this because she thinks that safety's number one, and safety of Earth and whoever, and she's going to keep doing this where Tony Stark thinks that there's some they can't just go out and start arresting people based on visions
before they do something. Yes, exactly.
And I think this sort of this build of this little feud kind of leads up to really the whole moment with the Hulk. And basically there's another vision that's seen by this guy Ulysses, who's one of the Inhumans, the guy who can see the visions. And he has a moment where he sees a vision of basically this just absolutely monstrous looking Hulk just killing everybody. And I think he had a couple of guys, maybe Tony Stark and another guy in his like hands. You could just see his huge, just huge guy just destroying these people. So, they say that, hey, they got to go stop the Hulk. Obviously, Tony doesn't agree with that. Everybody shows up at the Hulk's doorstep to prevent this. And next thing you know, the Hulk is killed by the surprise guy. Hawkeye shows up, and I don't know about you guys, I kind of laughed when I saw Hawkeye there.
Hey, he's actually doing something. I think the one thing that I think that the joke has always been, especially in the movies, if we're talking about the movies, is that he's the guy with the bow and arrow, and I think he's always been kind of like the butt of those kinds of jokes. And so for him to be what they kind of consider like he's now the most famous Avenger of all time, in a kind of joking way, because I think he has been kind of written off as being the second fiddle to practically every Avenger. That he was the one that if someone was gonna take down the Hulk, you would think it would probably be anybody but Hawkeye. But yeah, that was kind of a shocker. But I mean, as they explain later on, it kind of makes sense why he would be the one to do it, because he kind of has the lower moral compass in that sense. Like if he's got a job to do, he understands the responsibility. I think everybody else's feelings would get in the way. Like they wouldn't dream of killing Bruce Banner, but I think Hawkeye would be the one that could put that on his conscience.
Yeah. And it was, that's one thing I did like that they did in the comic as well, is how they kind of jumped back and forth. So like he shoots the arrow, and next thing you know, like you're in the courtroom and they're kind of going over the testimony of Tony Stark and Hawkeye. I can't think of his what's his real name?
Clint.
Barton.
Yeah.
Clint
so
Barnes.
they kind of cut back and forth, and I sort of appreciated that storytelling in a comic book form. But I gotta say, like I was just I was a little surprised that Hawkeye did it, and then again, like this is one of those comics where I think they're killing, big names off for. I think it's a little bit of like shock and awe, like trying to really make it a popular series. And that's why, War Machine goes, now Hulk goes.
Well, I think the whole problem with a Civil War, to me, has always sided along. There's two guys overall that are much more powerful, probably, than the others. And that would be like Thor and Hulk. So the fact that I think, obviously, this is the Jane version of Thor, right?
Yeah, the Jane Foster, yep.
Yeah, so you got Jane Foster as a Thor, who's not the original Thor. I'm pretty sure her powers are a little bit weaker than actual Thor. And then also you have She-Hulk, who is clearly doesn't have the same exact durability or power as the Hulk, because she's basically almost dead, like on her deathbed with their battle with Thanos, and she just basically got hit by a missile and sent into sent careening off somewhere. And exploded. The Hulk probably would have laughed that off. So that's why I got really confused when She-Hulk was basically dying almost, and I was thinking like, wait, she just got hit by like a standard rocket from like a rocket that kind of accidentally shot off and hit her from War Machine. That it kind of surprised me that almost did her in, whereas the actual Hulk, that would not have scathed him at all.
Yeah, I'm not totally familiar with all of her powers, but the fact she doesn't go Hulk back and forth, right?
She does. She's the lawyer in the courtroom in the beginning of the
but I thought she was,
but she doesn't Hulk up and like get massive like the
right.
Hulk does, but she turns green and gets a slightly bigger. I mean,
I think she's permanently green also.
That's what I was going to say.
She's literally in the beginning of the comic. She's the attorney.
And now that you say that, I remember seeing that in there. But I just thought in general she was one of those that never, like, she was always green is what I thought was her thing.
I'm with you guys. I'm not sure of her exact real origins or how she's portrayed in other comics.
Like, she's not as gamma up as Bruce Banner.
No,
I think that's the whole point. Like, she's got. Obviously,
she's green in that Haddix. I just pulled it up. She's green in the beginning.
Yeah, but I think the whole point was that it really does show the mortality of She-Hulk, which I've always grown up thinking that she was basically the female version of the Hulk, which in this comic that's clearly not the case. She might have superhuman strength to the extent of like a superhuman, maybe a little bit more. And maybe she has a little bit more of a rage ability to be a little bit more powerful, but nothing, compared to Bruce Banner.
Yeah, I think you're right there. So ultimately, we kind of wrap up this first series of issues. They have the court case for Hawkman or Hawkeye, and he is found innocent of charges, which kind of sets Tony off and begins the beginning of the soon-to-be civil war between these two sides. All right, for this week's Great Debate, we're going to kind of do a little bit different from previous, and I guess before we do get into the Great Debate, it's worth discussing that last 90-minute podcast on our television show, the Twitter poll. It was a whopping 80% to 20% in favor of Kyle and the binge watching.
The world has spoken.
I just have to say, all you PMPers out there are very lazy and want the world given to you all at once. All at once. So,
hey,
I'm just saying.
Look, they can choose. I think it's all about choice, man. They can choose if they want to purposely give them a week between episodes. They could do that if they want to. Clearly, if the opportunity's there, they're going to want to watch as much as humanly possible. Got to respect it. They are 100% correct. Thank you very much, PMPers. You did good.
And that said, this week I'm not going to go head-to-head against somebody, and we're not going to have a head-to-head. We will have a Twitter poll for it, but we were discussing in the big, in Civil War II, the big storyline is, do you believe in this, right to arrest and try to stop these visions from happening in the future, or do you let things happen and then follow up by, hey, you're breaking the law now we need to stop you? And we were all kind of on Team Stark in this one, so it was a little hard. I mean, we could have probably came up with a devil's advocate role, but instead of that, what we're going to do is we're kind of all the three of us debate together a little exercise in, if DC Comics had a civil war, who might be on each side? Kind of the big players who we think might be going head-to-head. And I guess, Haddix, you're sort of the DC guy. Do you see you could probably see yourself in a situation where they could write a similar story that Civil War I had, where it was, people registering as these superheroes or vigilantes or whatever, as opposed to keeping their identity secret. And you almost saw a little of that kind of in the movies themselves, with the way Superman kind of said, hey, I don't want to be spied on, I want to be able to do my thing, and they kind of said, no, you need to be responsible for your actions and all that. Who's to say, you're a god among us, like, who's to say you can't, you can just do as you please? So definitely a little bit of that topic in there. So I kind of want to start with your thoughts first. Who do you think? So let's just start with Batman. What side would you think he would, kind of be on in a situation like that?
We kind of briefly looked at a website earlier before we started, and I'd have to agree with the website that he would be the head of the opposition. He'd be your Tony Stark, if you will, anti-government all the way. And as dark and brooding as Batman is, he's all about being able to have your privacy and keep to yourself, and definitely no meddling. So I think he would be in the Tony Stark role.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. He's always obviously his secret identity is secret, so he's not one to want to give that up. And I definitely think, and it's sort of weird, because I feel like a lot of the DC characters, their secret identities kind of stay more secret than I feel like they do on the Marvel end of things. But I would have to agree with the Batman anyways, that he would err on that side.
And I guess let me rephrase that. He would be Tony Stark in Civil War II, but Captain America of Civil War I. Because technically, Iron Man was pro-government in Civil War I.
That's true, yeah.
And it wasn't really government in Civil War 2. It was just two superheroes that kind of disagreed. So.
Yeah, well, it was more like Tony Stark wanted to have a system in place where people could be kept in check.
Yes,
and that is something that is definitely not, or that is something that actually Batman would be for. Honestly, I think he wanted to make sure that if you have gods among each other, I think he would rather be on. You would think he would probably rather be on the side of.
No, I think he would be Captain America in Civil War 1. I think he would be against any type of making.
I guess because he's a loner. So yeah. I think his brain would think one way, but his personality would sway him towards. I don't want to be tied to any type of government, or anything that could possibly corrupt what he's doing, like a registration step.
Now,
okay, I agree.
I guess do you think Superman would also side on that, or do you think he would side against Batman and say like, hey, we need to police we need to be policed?
I think he would be he would try to be the peacekeeper and get everyone to come back together. I don't think he'd take anybody's side.
Yeah, I think
I agree. I think he's definitely been I think the whole Batman versus Superman rivalry has never been really again the whole. I don't know. I know that from my experience with especially Injustice comics was the reason why they went at each other there was because of an extenuating circumstance of like the death of Lois and kind of Superman kind of snapping in that case. So I think an even keel, level-headed Superman would not take a side.
Yeah, I think your guys are right, and I think another reason why is he knows ultimately he could severely injure and or kill most of these people, and he would do his best to not. Want to be that. Yeah. So he wouldn't want to be on a side. He would want to just try to, like you said, be a peacekeeper and, ultimately not hurt somebody.
Yep.
So that said, who do you think's that lead guy to oppose a Batman and, lead the charge for, hey, let's register ourselves?
That's a good question. And I feel like I am partial because we literally looked up that article and we saw the head of both sides. And I kind of got to agree that maybe because I can't think of a good one on my own that Hal Jordan would be kind of he's the follow the orders kind of guy. So he would kind of do what he was told, and his identity is already out there. People know Hal Jordan is the Green Lantern. So to him, why not have everybody else come forward and give their identities, if you will? So I think I'd have to agree with that and go with a Hal Jordan or a Green Lantern, if you will.
In general, I was going to say the Green Lanterns could all join together, but it's a little bit different with the DC end because so many of them are from other worlds. That Hal Jordan, I guess the Green Lanterns in general could say here's our real identity, but they could just peace out and leave planet Earth.
Exactly.
So it's a little more difficult there. I think
there's someone more. I think there's characters that would be more on the pro. On that other side more than Hal Jordan, but if you want the figurehead, you feel you need to have somebody that's going to have at least the opposite, be able to quell the opposition, and a Green Lantern is going to do that. Not to mention, if Hal Jordan is going to be the one that's leading the charge, you're automatically going to get the other Green Lanterns in out of respect and loyalty. And then Barry Allen, who's one of Hal Jordan's best friends, he'd probably join. So I think that's also the right decision if you really are going to make a storyline about it, because I think that's where the rift happens. I think Hal Jordan has a certain, and the Green Lanterns have a certain allegiance and alliances with certain people in the DC world. Batman, I think, has to kind of do his own inside recruitment in order to kind of get, because there's a lot of people don't really not huge fans of Batman. Batman kind of has never really had friends, so he's going to get some people that are going to join the cause for the cause itself, but not because of loyalty. I even think Hal Jordan is a reluctant person who would take that side. but is recruited because he has the connections. Someone like Amanda Waller would be somebody that would be way up more, I think, on the list of keeping everything in a, in check type of situation. But obviously Amanda Waller is not.
Well, I could see like Lex Luthor as well, like trying to get everyone to register. So I could see him like, trying to, in his own villainous ways, like pit them against each other and do his best to,
The only problem with the leader of it would have to be a good guy because no one's going to follow Lex
absolutely.
Luthor.
No. But I could see him kind of meddling in as well. As like a side thing.
He's all about national security. So yes, he would definitely want to have he would definitely be the pro side.
Right. I feel like Aquaman should be on the pro side just so he could be like, hey guys, this is actually who I am and you should respect me.
It's funny because I think he would be on Batman's side, but I see what you're saying.
I'm more making a joke than anything else.
Yes, I know.
So I mean,
he already hates the people on land anyway. So anything to say screw them would probably, Aquaman I think definitely joins Batman.
Well, so I mean, you start to, and I assume like Wonder Woman's probably on that side too. You start to get all those people over there, and it's like, well, you almost have to make some people on the anti-registration,
and maybe that's why
on the pro-registration, just to like try to counterbalance it. Yeah.
Although I could see like Hawkman and Hawkgirl being on the pro-registration side, they could try to use their military background to that standpoint, and they're pretty strong. I mean, you could get some other strong people, but yeah, once you get, although I think they make like Martian Manhunter, same as Superman, doesn't carry the way,
right?
So you're getting rid of a few powerful people like that. So
yeah, I mean,
but maybe that's why they've never done it.
It's harder
when you have characters that are that high above everybody else. That's what makes them so neutral. Is like, especially because I don't know how many people know that Clark Kent's Superman in the current storyline. In the current, I guess, comic book world, there are some where Clark Kent's identity is all out there. But I think because he's so above and beyond, like once again, it's Superman we're talking about, and Martian Manhunter kind of falls in that same thing. He's not from this planet. He doesn't care. I
think that's the problem too. Is so many of these people aren't from this world. It's with Marvel, there's so much more grounded to this time and to the United States or to the world or something like that, where they can sign these, Sokovia, Concord, that kind of thing, like where they're saying they agreed to it, but here, they're from other planets, things like that. Like they're not. There's no jurisdiction for them, so it'd probably be harder. There'd probably have to be a different reason for them to go head to head against each other. Maybe one, what Civil War II story was, maybe something to that effect, where they're actually trying to prevent villains before they become villains, that kind of thing. So,
would you see Superman and Martian Manhunter to be kind of like the equivalent? Not the equivalent as far as character, but as far as having to do with the Civil War. Superman I see as kind of more of like a Thor, and Martian Manhunter being like the Hulk. I feel like they don't have one way or the other to care about it, and either way, no one would be able to enforce. The government would not be able to enforce anything on Martian Manhunter or probably Superman, and at the same time, no one's gonna be able to enforce it on the Hulk or also a guy like Thor who can just up and portal whatever the hell he wants.
No, and I mean that's what it comes down to. That's why there was both sides, and they're trying to get the superheroes who are for them to help enforce it or talk their buddies into signing those accords and things like that. But it's an interesting topic, and look for a Twitter poll this week, PMPers, to get your vote on maybe, I don't know exactly how we'll word it, but we'll have some poll out there to get your thoughts on the DC potential civil war. And then in the future, we'll probably go back to the normal head-to-head as it seems fit, as it deems fit, based on the topic on hand. And don't forget Pseudo Nerd Pod for our Twitter for that one. So now that we're kind of in the heat of the battle of the Civil War, this is sort of the visual effects, the visual scenes that you want to see really well illustrated. Like I said, I can't say enough about it. Where you see all the battling take place, you see the sides, and they really, I don't know about you guys, but I felt like there was definitely like a fan service done in this one, where it was almost that they're trying to bounce off the success of the cinematic universe, and they really threw a lot of the cinematic stars in it. Like, the Guardians of the Galaxy were in there, and Groot had his I am Groot moment, and the
Defenders
were there. Yeah, the Defenders pop up, but things like that. They brought a lot of those characters in, which I feel like had they not had the popularity of the Netflix shows and the movies, they would not have been in this one. Like, you compare Civil War 1 characters to this one, and there's so many of the movie characters now, like, showing up in this one, which, I appreciate it as someone who really watches the movies, but I felt like there was a lot of that fan service in there.
Yeah, I could agree with you there. I think I feel like they figure the majority of their fans are like us, who watch all the movies and then maybe get interested in these big story arcs that are going to cause ripples. So we open this up and read it, and we weren't completely lost, even though we don't really read Marvel comics, because, we know who the Guardians of the Galaxy are. We know who the Defenders are. We know who Thor and Captain America are, Spider-Man. You know what I mean? You know who all these people are. And, I mean, even the fact that they made it about Captain Marvel versus Tony Stark, and Captain Marvel's the next big heroine. Heroine? Being, being implemented into the MCU. So, I mean, there you go. They're kind of just setting themselves up.
And I wanted to, before we even go further on that, I had a quick question, and I know we kind of talked about it off air, but I feel like it's still worth asking and getting an answer or opinion. What role right now is Captain America in? Because now we do see that he's in it, not in like a action role. He seems like more like a Nick Fury role, but I know that we were talking before too, that in Civil War 1, spoiler alert, he gets shot and killed, and then all of a sudden in Civil War 2 he's just back. And I don't know if there's a bridge between the two that explains how they bring him back, but if we're going right from Civil War 1 to Civil War 2 without any kind of real bridge, he's just there, and he's suited for action, but he doesn't really take any action in the whole movie.
A lot's happened since the two.
I was going to say, yeah, it's not like it's not a direct sequel by any means. It's 10 years later kind of thing. Like a lot has transpired in those 10 years.
Yeah, and he gets brought back somehow. I don't know the exact details, but
typical comic book,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Batman technically died in the story arc.
But so Captain Marvel, she kind of has like an attitude in it where there's a point where Captain America is not saying giving orders, but kind of is, or making decisions. And she basically like gets in front of him and says like, those aren't your orders to give. Almost like has she usurped Captain America, or does she lead a different group of people versus the Avengers?
She's the leader of the Ultimates.
The Ultimates, right. And so I'm glad you brought that up, Kyle, when you talked about her attitude, because I think this is it's now as good as any time to discuss it. But when we all sort of said we took Tony Stark's side in this, one thing Civil War 1 did, and the movie is the same way, it leaves that morality up to the viewer or the reader to decide, I can kind of understand where both sides are coming from. Oh, I side with Captain America, and then you hear something else, you're like, oh, I side with Tony Stark, and vice versa, and you keep going back and forth. This one, the way they wrote it, it's really hard to cheer on Captain Marvel in this. Am I wrong in that?
The one thing I'll give them credit for is she makes a great point when she says, if someone came up to you and told you that guy over there has a gun and he's about to start opening fire and kill all these people, would you do something like run away, or would you say, well, no, I'm just going to go about my business until he actually starts shooting people? And that opened up the whole idea.
That opened up the whole, at the beginning, I know we didn't discuss it, was the very beginning, the prologue, where where She-Hulk is defending the Jester. I don't know what his real name is, but I know he's a villain Jester who, did a lot of bad stuff, did a lot of robberies and things like that. And
probably told
the whole
some
point
bad
at the beginning,
jokes.
And the whole point behind it was they were trying to put him in jail for just talking about, kind of like they said,
she said talking shop. He never did anything. He had paid his dues in the past, and here he was just talking about the life of
who he
crime.
thought was a friend of his, talking about what he would do if he was still doing it, or things like that, or even if he said, "Oh, I'm gonna rob this bank." Like, well, he never robbed a bank. If I go up to a cop right now, I mean, maybe I shouldn't try it, but if I go up to a cop and say, "Hey, tomorrow I'm gonna rob this bank," I don't know what legally that cop could do to me, because I legally haven't done anything other than just saying I'm going to do something. But I think once again, it creates that moral fiber line where you still have to give people the freedom of thought. And if you don't, then you're basically making people you're making people give up that right to be a free thinker.
Right. And I think they did that. I think between explaining that and then just throughout the whole comic, I felt like they did a lot of really making you sympathetic to that side, and I think less so. I mean, yeah, like to your point, Haddix, there's a couple points where you can understand and empathize a little bit, like her, idea of like, if this, like there's security there, like wouldn't you want to stop a horrible disaster from happening? But it's the Minority Report situation all over again. Like, how do you stop something that hasn't happened yet?
Yes, yeah.
And
yeah. I agree with you.
I felt overall they made her out to be more of a bad guy's probably a strong word, but they made her out to be more of the antagonist than the previous Civil War was built up.
And that might be on purpose. And I, we can talk about how it ends later, because I know you had grievances with it, but that might be on purpose.
Well, I think the other thing too, even though we're not, I think we all agreed that we're not huge fans of I guess the whole Minority Report argument of Captain Marvel, but I think it also makes it tough knowing that the first two visions that they did use were correct in a sense. Like, I mean, they had two huge invasions. That they had the Celestial Invasion and also Thanos, and those are two huge, undertakings to try and defeat, and they wouldn't have probably be able to done it as easy and with its minimal casualties if it wasn't for Ulysses. And his vision. So if it wasn't for that, if it was just alone, we found out that they were able to figure out that Thanos was coming and the Celestial Invasion. If that was just on that, I would side with Danvers. But then once, the whole point of it was that Tony Stark is curious and wants to know, like, how does he figure this stuff out? Because he can't just believe it. It's hard to. You like. That's the kind of person Tony Stark is. He's an engineer. He's a scientist. He needs to figure out exactly. He's a futurist, as they said in the comic.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't make sense to believe in premonitions and visions unless there's real scientific data and also a 100% certainty. And then after he finally figures out how everything is done, which I guess is energy is collected in order to create some sort of algorithm of probabilities, it comes down to where it's really like a 10% chance that these visions actually happen exactly the way that they're seen. Now, maybe that could be, interpreted in differently when saying exactly the way it would be. But if someone said it's a 10% chance that all these visions will come true, you can't all of a sudden say, well, 90% of them aren't, but we're still going to take action against innocent people.
Yeah, and it leads up in the comic then to there's the next big vision, which is Spider-Man killing Steve Rogers. And that seems to – this is sort of the big I guess the heart-wrenching, heart-pulling moment, I think, of the whole series, if you want to call it that.
Outside of Hulk getting shot in the back of the head.
Now, see, like, that didn't bother me. Like, for me personally, I thought the way they showed Tony Stark at the beginning when his buddy died, like the pain on his face. Like, I thought like that was probably the most like intense moment, but they really showed that, this Spider-Man is a kid, and he saw the vision, as did everyone else, of him killing Steve Rogers, and like he's dealing with that like moment, like, how could I do this? These visions have all come true. Like, what would ever possess me to kill Captain America? And that was sort of the big kind of cliffhanger, going from issue 5 to 6, is how is this going to come true? How is this Spider-Man, how's this kid going to actually kill someone like that? And I really did think it was a strong moment.
Yeah, because it was in the middle of a fight where, like, it was right in the middle of that battle. It basically stopped that whole fight from escalating any further as well. So it was almost like that vision was good, because it created a ceasefire for the moment, because everybody had to process this. Because for Hulk, for Bruce Banner, that's a real thing that could happen. Like if anybody is going to lose control
himself,
and kill people because they can't control it, that's the Hulk. And there, obviously, Bruce Banner knew that, and he had Hawkeye assigned with a particular arrow to kill him if that ever were to happen again. But yeah, it's very different when you've got a teenage boy who is very new on the scene, has no whatsoever motives to do anything bad to Steve Rogers, and it made everybody had to stop and go, and it's the first time where I think everyone had to really question the visions. It's like, there's no way that would ever happen.
Yeah, I feel like people were kind of switched sides. A couple of people switched sides after that. Like, oh, there's no way this kid can do that. Like,
that was definitely a turning point for a lot of people. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, it was like, hey, they were following these blindly because every vision's coming true. And then they see this, they're like, whoa, like this one doesn't seem. I just can't see this, boy. This Spider-Man, like, he's a kid. There's no way he would just kill viciously, Steve Rogers.
Not to mention he has personal friends on the team, and even if they all 100% believed in the visions, they could not wrap around the fact that a friend of theirs would ever do something like that. So, like, yeah, a lot of people would change their mind just because it was Miles Morales. But that's his name, right? That's the other Spider-Man.
I believe so.
Right.
Yeah. So he has people on there that he's actually created personal bonds with in a short time, and especially considering the fact that I'm pretty sure, the youngest member of anybody on that team, of any of the Avengers or the Marvel superheroes at this point. And it's just like it's that innocence that I think that really got to everybody, going like, how can this most innocent of probably of our, like, most uncorrupted, salt of the earth type of hero that this guy could potentially kill the other probably most salt of the earth, innocent, uncorrupted person, which is Captain America. Like, that could not register with these people.
Right. And that's this is about the high point for me in this comic. And it was, this is sort of, like I said, this is around the end of issue 6 to 7. And once 7 and 8 come around, these are the last two issues. This is where this kind of lost it for me. And, it shows Ulysses at that point. He starts going into some vision of the, distant, almost like a post-apocalyptic kind of future where it looks like there's nothing but a wasteland. He's talking to who you assume to be Wolverine. I don't know if they ever actually say his name. He keeps saying, I think he keeps questioning it, but he never actually says, hey, it's...
He says kid and bub, and he actually, he has the claws, and he killed one of the Hulk kids or whatever.
Which happens in the Logan story arc.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's assumed. Also, during a post-apocalyptic, it makes sense that if there's going to be anybody
who could survive the world, sure,
it's going to be Hulk's kids and Logan.
Yeah, so they kind of show that, and it's kind of going back and forth, and then meanwhile, there's Captain America and Spider-Man kind of show up at the Capitol building to, I think, more or less prove that this vision's not going to come true.
Yes. Yep.
And then Captain Marvel and Iron Man show up, and they end up battling into a pretty serious fight. And meanwhile, Ulysses finds out in his distant future that that fight that Captain Marvel and Iron Man are having leads to this wasteland future that he sees. So he's trying to get the Inhumans and everyone together to help stop this from happening. And then it just sort of ends kind of strangely, I thought, and almost without an end. You know, Iron Man he gets pretty beat up, and then he's like basically on a deathbed of some sort, where they're kind of saying like he's in very critical condition, and they're not sure. Apparently, he's been experimenting on himself or something over these years, and somehow he's keeping himself alive, but you're really not sure exactly what the future holds for Tony Stark. And you still kind of you still kind of don't know what that means for the future. This, you know, that Ulysses saw, and then the issue ends with the president talking to Captain Marvel and kind of trying to put her in the role that he was going to put Rhodes in at the beginning, and she ends with the big quote that she has some ideas about the future. So I don't know. I guess we could kind of dive into our overall thoughts here in the final segment. But just real briefly before we go to that, do you guys kind of agree with my assessment, or did you were you okay with how 7 and 8 sort of tied in at the end there?
I'll say this. I'll let Hax go last in this one because I have a quick thing. I think my only gripe about how it ended was if Ulysses, I have a hard time saying that name, has a vision where the fight would ultimately lead to an apocalypse of some sort, or that they need to stop, because really no one stopped the fight. I mean, Captain Marvel won, and basically, it ended on their terms in a sense. It wasn't like nothing more was going to escalate, at least from what I can see. Unless I missed something or there was something cryptic that I missed. So it almost felt like even that vision was sort of wrong, because even though people went to try and stop them, no one really stopped them from fighting. Like they went at it until there was a winner. So I guess I feel like the last couple of visions he had were wrong. And this one in particular, if it was wrong, that what was the point of having that final vision? Like, I feel like that was almost a waste if it really didn't serve a purpose.
Well, so I agree with you, Kaiser. And here's my thought on it, without getting into too many details. I do agree that it seemed to kind of just end, and I think that's because they're using this to catapult into some new phase of the comics. And I think Captain Marvel might not be a bad guy, but might be different because of all this.
Right.
And I thought it was kind of, I don't know if I want to use the word cop-out or just weird, but how they ended Ulysses, basically they said, oh, Ulysses was evolving the whole time, and what actually happened was he was able to predict possible futures because he just gains all this knowledge, and he evolved past humans, so he went to be with some celestial beings. And I don't know where, somewhere.
Like he joined the rank of like actual gods.
Yeah,
like.
Yeah. So basically their cop-out to all these visions was, oh, well, it was just he was predicting possible futures, and he just so happened to be right on a couple of them. And that was why at the end there's like 3 pages in a row of all these random futures that could potentially happen. So the Logan thing is a future that could potentially happen because he pushed her too hard, which I guess he never even really said Captain Marvel. But so they're kind of leaving that open to, oh, this might happen later unless someone does something about it. So right. I agree with you. I think it was a little bit of a cop-out, but maybe to give him credit, it is for some huge future plan that they have coming down the line. Oh, welcome back to another rendition of the List Twist List. So segment brought to you this week by Sierra Mist. Insist on the twist.
We're still going with that, huh?
Sued. I don't want to get sued here. All right.
Lady, that's free.
If you're gonna be funny about it, at least put out like something that's not being made anymore, like Surge.
That is free advertising. Okay.
I feel like if I'm Sierra Mist, I don't want to be tied to this segment ever.
Dude, I was like,
I feel like Pepsi's doing just fine, Addicts.
Now I'm just doing it because I think it's hilarious. But I was like, for some reason, it makes me think of Miss Twist, and then I googled it, and their slogan is literally "insist on the twist." So I just got to say all of this in one sentence.
Literally the worst segment name in the history of segment names, by far.
Well, anyway, this week, I didn't want to do anything too comic specific because other than kind of this and maybe some other arcs we've read, we don't know a whole lot, and there's probably a lot of our P&Pers out there that don't either. So I decided to do something more MCU related and just kind of tie it all in because I think especially us, we're more familiar with that. So I found a list on filmfad.com written by my boy Eric. There's no last name.
That's credible.
Just
and
Eric.
It is called just Eric. And it is called the top 5 worst parts of the MCU. And I decided to go with this list for I think it's number 2. And you guys will appreciate it when we get there. But there's 5. And I'll tell you them, and I'll give you. He kind of wrote like a paragraph or two. I'll just give you a quick kind of synopsis of why he chose this.
I wonder if we can guess any of these before you even mention them, just as a just for fun.
Some of them are. You guys will probably agree with them. Well, number 1, but let me just go through them, and you guys can we can go from there. So his number 5 is no memorable film scores, and I mean it kind of speaks for itself. But one of his lines in here is, can you tell me what the Captain America or Iron Man theme is? And not the Black Sabbath song where they say, I am Iron Man. But their actual theme music.
What's funny is I have literally never given that thought. And I don't know why. Because you think about Star Wars, and they're some of the most memorable themes for every person when they show up on the screen. Like, that's that music. I couldn't tell you a single. It was almost like I didn't even realize that movie was scored at all.
Exactly.
Any of those.
But even in DC's, they have like the
great
Wonder Woman
point.
music.
Great point. Yeah. And I thought Lex Luthor had good music. I thought Superman had good music. Yeah. Wow. That's a great point. Yeah. It's not good.
But once again, it's not even so much that it's not that that's not good. I think that's just there's a different kind of cinematography.
That could be it. Yeah.
Thing that they do. Like I think we talked about this way back when we first started doing this podcast about that was a device that was used on purpose in order to create different feelings in different scenes of Star Wars. Yep. And it just was one of those things where in the way Marvel wanted to do it, they didn't need to do that. It wasn't. There were a lot of times where just the setting just needed either menacing or climactic, just something kind of B-roll, it's just on the back, just to kind of make you feel something. But it didn't need, its own score in order to. You didn't need John Williams to make you feel what you needed to feel. With that said, though, I mean, I love that about Star Wars, and I love that about a lot of movies that you have like a type of memorable score or song or whatever, a soundtrack, if you will, to remember your movies. But I think the reason why I don't think it's a complaint, because once again, the three of us never even really thought of it as anything, whether it was a plus or a minus. I don't think that really even danced in our heads all that much about the lack of music.
Well, I think that's why there's no music that makes you think of it. I can tell you how badass I thought Wonder Woman's music was the first time I heard it when I watched that movie. You can't say that about anything in the MCU.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean it's that leitmotif that John Williams did that is also seen with Hans Zimmer in the DC universe that is completely non-existent here. So great point. I don't necessarily like you said, Kyle. It's not the end of the world because we didn't think about it. But it also, the fact that we can still point to that on the DC side says, hey, we do appreciate it.
Yeah.
They also don't exactly I don't mean to stretch this, but they also don't exactly in the Marvel movies create moments where there's a I guess a big entrance or like a foreboding where you sit there and you actually have to digest it with the music. There's a lot of times when Darth Vader comes in, the entrance is a big part of it.
Sure.
When people make it, there's not really a lot of grand entrances in these Marvel movies, at least not yet. And even maybe when Thanos shows up, maybe he'll have something, but it just seems like everybody who comes in, it's expected. It's not shocking. It's not. There's nothing ominous about it. It's just the next scene.
Right.
Good points. His number 4, and this one is whatever. He's a big fan of Red Skull, so he was not happy that Red Skull was basically your average villain, and we've kind of talked about villains before, but he's a huge fan of Red Skull, and in the comic books, he's almost a Joker to Batman, pure evil. You don't feel bad for him or sympathetic for him at all because he's pure evil, and they really didn't hit on that in the movies, which, again, like we've discussed, I feel like the villains in general aren't that great in the MCU.
For me, that's just I'll leave it as simple as that. The villains have never been that interesting in the MCU.
Yeah, and honestly, if Red Skull was supposed to be that important, then they really did drop the ball because, to me, if we're even talking about like memorable bad guys, I think Red Skull is towards the bottom of the list in general.
Which I think, and to his point, is he agrees with, and that's why he's upset with it, is because he should be more badass than that. But anyway, number 3, the Hawk and Black Widow romance. Basically goes on to say it felt real forced, especially since they literally have no type of romance in Avengers 1, and then all of a sudden Avengers 2, they're sad and
literally the weirdest thing that was one of those that reminds me of Rogue One, where all of a sudden they're like, oh, there might be a love interest story there. Like, where did that come from? The only difference is here it was after we've watched them in an entire movie together, and then she shows up in I think a couple other movies. Meanwhile, like if anything, I would have always thought like her and Captain America had a little thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, like it's actually Hulk. Like what? Yeah, no, I agree with that.
See, I actually like that better because I think that creates more. I think that creates more story than anything because for the Hulk, it's almost like either like a Beauty and the Beast or like the girl who fell in love with like the Frankenstein monster. It's like nobody could ever love the Hulk because of who he is. It's almost like she's there as someone that's trying to soothe the Hulk or someone that could calm the Hulk down. Whereas I feel like if Black Widow had a thing for Tony Stark or for Steve Rogers, I feel like that's easier. I think that's lazy writing. If it makes more sense, that's fine. But I think if they're going to try and create something, if they're going to do one love interest where it's like almost like forbidden love, which that's what it kind of is. It's like Black Widow and Bruce Banner because and then just how it happens at the end of the second Avengers movie is I think he understands that he can never be that for her, even though he does love her. And that's why he basically leaves, on the ship, on that, whatever, that plane, and just kind of disappears because he thinks in the end it's for her own safety. And also because he loves her so much. Well, so I'm okay with that story, even though yes, it's forced. They're always forced. I think we've always said every love story.
It's not that I don't agree. Like I'm all fine for the forbidden love or the he's a monster and wants to protect her and and protect from harming her, so he leaves. I'm fine with all that story if it made sense, but it came out of nowhere, and I think that's what bothers me.
Exactly. They basically did it so that they could do what you said, Hoagie, where at the end you kind of feel bad for him, like, oh, he's leaving because he loves her and doesn't want to hurt her. Where if they were building that from Avengers 1, okay, I'll give you that. But yeah, they just brought it into the movie so that they could do that at the end.
But a lot has happened between between the first movie and the second movie. Maybe a lot of it hasn't been hit on.
Yeah.
Obviously, something has sparked in between. It's not like all of a sudden they fell in love. There has been something already put in place that they're kind of...
Yeah, but there was literally nothing in any of the movies, and then they basically said,
it's
in between the movies...
lazy writing there.
Yeah. But anyway, I digress. We'll let Eric, continue. Number 2, and this was the one This is the one why I decided to pick this list. Darcy from the Thor films. Okay. And we talked about her 2 weeks ago when we did the TV and Two Broke Girls.
Oh, okay. Is that the Two Broke Girls girl?
That's the same girl. And I'm going to read one line, and I couldn't agree more. So on top of being frankly useless to both films, she is so freaking unfunny, is what he wrote. And I couldn't agree more.
Honestly, I cannot remember like anything that she does in it.
She's the comedic relief in the movies, but she's not. That's the bad part.
And well, if Two Broke Girls is any indication of her comedy, I will have to agree with that sentiment.
I got nothing. I just had to look her up real quick to figure out who she was in the Thor movies.
Yeah.
It was the girl in the beanie.
Yeah, yes. And again, I love the Thor movies, and I didn't hate her in it, but I definitely don't think she's funny, and I think you could have cut every part with her out, and the movie would have been just as good as it was. But anyway, I just had to pick that because I don't like Two Broke Girls. And number one, which we've talked about in length in previous, and I think we all agree, the Mandarin twist was horrible.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah.
That's all you can say about that.
Yeah, so I mean,
that all falls with the whole idea that I don't think they've really hit the villain role very well,
yeah.
And I think that really puts pressure on them to really deliver with Thanos, because if Thanos falls flat, I think that as good as the movies have been, because they've been very good movies, but I think that it's just as important that if this whole payoff ends up being flat with Thanos, I think it really can potentially put this whole series into a little bit of a question mark of how successful, maybe not so successful money-wise or box office-wise, because obviously we're going to throw money at it, but just as an overall project, like it just seems like clearly there are things that could have been done better in how long has the production been with us now? Over 10 years now.
I think we're right around there, yeah.
Yeah, so think about like the 10 years of working on this, and clearly they're going to do more Avengers movies and Marvel movies when this is all done, in the future, and they're going to have to look at this and see what they did right or what they did wrong. And I would like to hope that they figured out what they're doing with the villains and execute it well before this whole series is over.
Yep, I agree. And again, thanks to Eric for the list, and no affiliation at all, but insist on the twist, ladies and gentlemen. Insist on the twist.
All right, so as we kind of get towards the end of the podcast here, we've kind of talked a little bit, on whether or not we like the story overall, that kind of thing. So I think we kind of want to end things on that note of your guys' overall thoughts. I kind of gave mine already. I really enjoyed it, and I thought overall it was better than Civil War 1. But like Civil War 1, that sort of copped out and fell apart at the end, I think it did the same thing. The only difference is I thought this was much better building up to that point. Not to mention I thought the artwork was phenomenal. Hoagie, why don't we start with you? What was your, overall feelings on the Civil War II?
It was really good. I think this is actually a very good comic to jump into if you really haven't read many of the comics. There might have been some people that you might have been a little bit. That's a great
point, actually. I agree with that.
Because I haven't read really any Marvel book or comic since the Amazing Spider-Man comics. When I was a kid, and this was actually really good because everything for the most part is either recognizable or at least has some relevance to the knowledge that I think most moviegoers who are paying attention at least a little bit.
Well, and that's what I was saying earlier is I think they did so many callbacks and shout-outs to all the characters that are from the movie that if you're a fan of the Marvel movie universe, you could really sit down and read this and kind of enjoy it because you enjoy the characters that are in there.
And the casualties, like I said, we have Rhodey who dies. You have the Hulk. These are major characters in the movie universe. It's not like Medusa was killed, or was, remember, the queen of the Inhumans. Like to us, to me, anyways, maybe to an avid comic book reader, the death of Medusa is a huge blow, or or just somebody else that maybe I'm not too familiar with. But they went for the jugular in this comic, as far as you have Tony Stark's best friend and a founding member of the Avengers, who are now in this storyline just dead. And we almost lost She-Hulk as well, who's, once again, not someone I know, but recognizable. It's a recognizable figure. It's someone that that was explained to me, even in the comic, oh, that's my cousin or whatever. So we know where the affiliation is. So I liked it in the sense that, from somebody who's never read a comic in the past 10 years and has been really, really into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is actually a really good time, and it was a really good feeler into going back into the comics, because a lot of the plot points were familiar.
Haddix, some final thoughts from you?
Overall, I liked it. I really liked it. To Hoagie's point, the deaths were meaningful. To your point, I do think the ending was a little rough, and didn't hold up to the quality of the actual comics. But I am holding out hope that it is setting up for something later. As a matter of fact, I think Civil War: The Oath is either already started coming out or is already out. I'm not sure.
Well,
but it's kind of the aftermath.
I kind of want to just respond to what you said there, and I think that's part of my problem with this. Is it definitely is. It's left with that opening. It's left with some questions to be answered, and ultimately it's leaving itself open for other events and other series to spin off of it. And I think that's kind of my problem too, is like, I just feel like I wish stories could just have an ending without having to set up for future sequels and other spin-offs. And I understand Marvel's trying to make money, and this is their way to do it, is to, branch off and do all these other things. But sometimes it's just nice to have a story end, Yeah.
Yeah, I could agree with you there. I can see. I also think they're trying to bridge their comics and their movies together. They're trying to create stories that they could possibly extend onto the movie screen. So we'll see where it goes. But overall, really enjoyed it.
So I think the other thing I thought about too, real quick. Sorry to cut you off. The only thing I thought too was, I think the reason why they do stuff like that, and it's to make money, but it's also to give the illustrators and writers things to do. Because if you make an ending, what they basically did was they now can potentially do a spinoff that focuses mainly on just Captain Marvel. They can do another one that focuses mainly on She-Hulk, and because obviously she's still alive, she's clearly brooding over this whole, her cousin's dead because she died to the hands of Hawkeye, who got acquitted and is not going to answer for his crime. So there's a lot of devices here that could branch out into more comics, which really for Marvel, that's more revenue. That's also more jobs.
Yeah. I get all that. I do. And Haddix, you kind of brought up a point about a future, them developing for future movies. Do you guys, do you see Civil War 2 being a potential movie in 4 or 5 years, where the Guardians of the Galaxy could be battling in it? Thanos maybe could show up. Maybe there is a She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, the other Spider-Man would be, well developed into it at this point. Like, do you guys see that being a real potential possibility?
I personally think that if Robert Downey Jr. ever quits being Iron Man, a version of this obviously would be a good way for him to go, where he's actually the death that he actually does die, and they don't do the whole, him not being dead thing. And it just creates more conflict there. I could see this being some version of this being that, and I could even see, like I said, Tony Stark actually, this ending Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
I would be very interested to see that. And I do think when the time comes that they could kill him off in some story. I still think it could happen in Infinity Wars, but maybe they hold off for a while. Who knows? Any final thoughts about the comic book in general that we haven't discussed, or anything that you guys want to point out about it before we kind of wrap things up today?
Not on my end.
Not really. I guess I do agree that the Ulysses ending was a little weird. Almost borderline cop-out ending for him. I guess the other thing I will appreciate, especially coming from somebody who doesn't read a lot of the comics, is that I learned that there are a shit ton of groups in the Marvel universe. Like when they were talking about the Alpha Strike or Alpha Force or the Alpha Squad, I don't know what the hell it's called. The Ultimates, then you have the Avengers, and then you have the Ultimate Avengers. Like it was just. I really didn't know. So when they were taking sides, I had a hard time trying to figure out whose side was taking what, because I really didn't know the affiliations that were that. Like, I'm assuming that Iron Man is an Avenger. He's a member of the Avengers. So, like, did all of the current Avengers side with him, or were there some Avengers that took the side of Danvers? And then you said Danvers is a part of the
Ultimates. The
Ultimates, but also I believe leads the Alpha Squad or whatever that I think she's also the leader of that as well. So it was just like I got confused, but at the same time it made me want to go and like research everything as far as all these different groups. And then obviously Guardians of the Galaxy, I believe there was another person in there that was not part of the ones that I'm used to seeing. I think there was like 6 there. I think Venom was in it, right? And Venom was a member of the Guardians. I don't know. This is really weird.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a lot of characters to manage. And I will say, for at least the main players, the other point I kind of made briefly earlier, and I'll just kind of finish up on that, is I thought they were well written. I felt they felt like the movie level characters to me in some of the, especially the banner between
the Bruce Banner.
Yeah. The between Tony Stark and Spider-Man at one point, and it just his wit was there, and some of the way they responded, like it made me chuckle a bit. So I thought overall the artwork was good. The dialogue was well written. And, while the plot I thought dropped at the end, I think it's worth a read, especially if you're a fan of the Marvel Universe. I don't think you need to be a diehard comic book fan, but if you're into at least the Marvel Universe, I would recommend it as a read. I give it as, maybe like a 6.5 to 7 out of 10 overall.
I'd agree with that.
Well, that's going to be it for the show this week. Let us know, what your thoughts were on Civil War 2. Feel free to go to pseudonerdpod.com to find our Facebook, Twitter, all that, and go leave us that 5-star rating on iTunes. Those reviews really help get us up the charts.
Also, the comic, if you actually want to buy the comic and read it and give us your thoughts, Marvel has a store, I think, on marvel.com. And I'm not sure how much it costs. I think Haddix is the one that bought it. It's not that bad. It's not that expensive. It's definitely worth buying.
Yeah, and if you download it on the iPhone app, it's actually kind of fun to scroll through on their little way to where it zooms up, and it actually makes you feel like you're kind of watching a little movie. I enjoyed it. From the Great Lakes to the Golden Gate, I'm Josh Kaiser. He is Josh Haddix, and he is Kyle Hoagland. And we will see you guys next week with a pseudo short.
Have a good Friday.
See ya.